Jakove, you can go ahead and start.
Sorry about that, but Abarkari was playing with the cable. So yeah, welcome everyone. So today we have Mrs. Nafia Akdeniz, if I pronounce it well.
Perfect.
And yeah, exactly. So she's a poet, ethnographer, researcher, and she's, as I understood, she was working mostly about in-betweeners. And actually, so today we'll see through her ethnographic process how she managed to connect ethnographic studies with a poem,
Art.
which actually, yeah, like I forgot the art. Yeah, I forgot the word. Yeah, exactly. So research with art, and it's quite actually interesting. And as maybe some of you has followed our like the second, it was about in betweeners with Japanese public like spaces, in between spaces. So I found it very interesting because we had like a small introduction a couple of days ago. So I found it very interesting, and we are very excited to see from her own perspective, and especially from the city of Famagusta, that will have our, like, it's most likely to be in Famagusta, our excursion day. So I hope I introduced you very well, at least
So much.
some the one that I catched. And yeah, feel free to start your lecture.
Okay, I will be sharing a PowerPoint presentation with you because visuals, especially maps, will matter to support what I'm saying. I will leave explaining why I'm into in-betweenness to the end of the presentation, maybe through your questions, because the work itself will tell you all about it, like what makes me into that kind of work as a scholar, but not only as a scholar, as a Turkish Cypriot as well. Let me share my screen and we'll talk all about it through the slides. I should be sharing my screen, entire screen, so that I can allow you to hear the recorded poems as well. So let's give it a try. Please let me know if you see my screen. Yes, you see my cover, I believe. Yes, okay, cool. What you see on the cover is the map of the poetry route I'll be taking you through. So let me go into the details directly. The content of the presentation will include a very, very brief theoretical framework where I want to define what place memory is and how I take it as a technology of memory and how I practice it with poetry. And our context is Varosha, Famagusta, and I want to just define the context for those of you who are not very familiar with that context. For Cypriots, they will all know what I'm talking about. I want to then go to explain why I named my poetry project We're Not Ghosts and why this project focuses on public spaces only. Then we will go into the poetry stations in Varosha one by one. We have 3 stations and we'll see what's going on there. First of all, I don't know if that concept is familiar to you as architects, but it's an interdisciplinary concept which is studied by architects, geographers, ethnographers, anthropologists, sociologists. It's a core concept that analyzes the relationship of a human memory to the place itself. It can refer to the places, how they are remembered, not only by individuals, but by communities as well, and how those memories are connected to not only physical, but cultural and social aspects. And the processes of, all the processes of this connection to the past, to the future, to how we feel, our experiences, which in return shapes our identity, sense of belonging, and the history. And it can be both personal and communal, collective, as I said. With the personal place memory, you can think of all your own childhood memories, how you remember your home, your neighborhood, your schools. But for the collective memory, you can think of all these shared spaces like public spaces, monuments, historical sites, cities in our context is Varosha, and how this is central to our national cultural identity. The key components of place memory can be physical, the physical environment, like buildings, landscapes, any landmarks that I believe architects would be most interested in. But you can't separate any building from the social interaction going on in that, the way people experience and interact with these places to shape what they remember about it, the cultural narratives, stories, myths, traditions, rituals. In our context, during the presentation, I will be telling you how I use Varosha narratives, how they narrate, tell the story of how they belong to that place and the emotional bond they feel, the deep emotional connection to a place. Basically, place memory is about the physical spaces that are, full of meaning through our memories, our experiences, and I would add our dreams of that place, both individually and collectively. I would love to refer to Marita Starken, who is a communication professor, to her specific concept, technologies of memory, through her book Tangled Memories that was published in 1997. And it is a seminal work in memory studies. She there claims that cultural memory is not passive. It's actively produced, stored, remembered, and circulated through various media. Think of all the cultural artifacts and practices, be it an object, be it an image, any representation, rituals, memorials, monuments, literature, documentaries, anything cultural. The movies, for example, all the novels, Netflix documentaries, everything, any cultural artifact that is produced actively produces cultural memory. And I take poetry as a technology. It's a technology of memory for me, because through poetry, which is an intangible cultural heritage, we can enhance our understanding, our attempt to understand human experience deeply, which is usually invisible, lost in maps or historical books. Poetry has the power to make that specific human experience visible. It clarifies and magnifies the feelings, the dreams, the experience through metaphors, images that it creates. It invites embodied experience, which involves not only intellectual practice, but also emotional, spiritual, and aesthetic engagement with the human experience. It is used to explore complex realities of injustice, and it's a call for justice, going deep into the power structures of how oppression, suppression, and injustice happens. And it expands the audience. Like, one of the main reasons of me trying to transfer my academic work into artistic work is to expand the audience of the human experience I'm trying to define through my ethnographic work, which is enforced displacement. So by putting this experience into poetry, I believe I will be reaching out to different audience, which will increase, hopefully, the impact towards justice. Let me give you a context of Varosha. Those who are familiar, you can just tolerate me for a minute. The war in 1974 in Cyprus displaced approximately 30,000 Greek Cypriot Famagustians from that specific place that I mentioned. And this seaside resort turned into a derelict, abandoned military zone captured by Turkish army. And the city was held in capture for half a century without any human resettlement, and it is used as a political bargain in peace negotiations, which is still unresolved. It is a contested, pending futural space for human resettlement, and in 2020, as a surprise to everyone, it was partially opened. Like before 2020, even looking at it, photographing it, as you see in the sign, was forbidden, and the ones who attempted to do this was prison. And in 2020, we opened it for public gaze. And this allowed, of course, the former residents to come to their city, but not as, returning home, but as visitors of a site for dark tourism, in quotation marks. And my 3-year ethnographic doctoral study was a study in the field of communication, where I explored the narratives of meaning-making processes of this enforced displacement, not being able to return home, their place attachment, and constantly postponed future resettlement to that place. And drawing on that study, my ongoing, never-ending postdoctoral study now is both academic and artistic. And here today I will be presenting that artistic version of my study named We're Not Ghosts. I would love to quickly give you the link. I can share that link later to the chat with you, to that project called We're Not Ghosts, Varosha Narratives. It's designed as a sound walking, and from the web page of my NGO that I worked together with during the production of that project, you can see in 3 languages, Greek, Turkish, and English, the poems together with the relevant videos. You can also see the text version of the poems. If you're someone appreciating poetry through text more, here it is. There's also a QR code that you can scan through and upload the application called Echoes. Remember, this is a geo-triggered project, and the main aim is for you walking there in the physical area, so that the poems will be playing in the language you prefer when you are at that specific spot. And I will go into the map in detail. Why do I name this project We're Not Ghosts? Well, my research said so. I heard during my interviews, and I had 45 interviews during my research, people saying, why do people call our city ghost town? I mean, we're not that. It's a kind of counter response to that naming of the city as ghost town, because they're still alive, they're not ghosts, and it's a claim of their memory, the place memory, their attachment to that place, and a right to have a say in place revival, back to life. And it is a call to be seen and recognized, unlike ghosts. And I relate to that phrase as a Turkish Cypriot as well. And the whole point of telling that story is to call for recognition, to be visible, not only for the people of Varosha, but for all the people of Cyprus who feel unrecognized, who feel unseen. And let's go into the map of the poetry stations. Please remember, this is a suggested route. I mean, you see there is Sea Station, Garden Station, Agora Station, and here's the entrance, circled in orange. This is where you enter the city through the checkpoint, and I suggest you go to the seaside first, where you will have 3 poems. The sea was a constant topic during their stories, during their narratives, telling me how the sea was important for them, how they've spent their life as sea people, how in their veins they didn't have blood but sea water. It was that important for them. So I ended up creating 3 poems there. Then I will, the route takes you to the Garden Station and then Agora Station. Let's dive into those places. But first, let me quote a person from Varosha who was displaced from her home in 74. And she was saying, and that was the time in 2020 when the city was open to public visits, and they were asked to go and claim their properties. And Vivian of Remedial Plomibus saying, well, I don't want to be claiming only my personal property. Where's my public space? I am now left to claim my home, leaving all others unclaimed, she said to me during the interview. And she also published this in different newspapers. It was translated into Turkish as well. She was saying, my school, the park, the stadium, the tennis court, the beach, library, even the city streets that I used to pass by every day on my bike. This is how the essence is lost. She was saying, unless we claim the public spaces as well, we're not claiming anything in the city, because personal property is personal property, but we claim the city. We want to claim the city as a community, because focusing only on claiming my personal property is like giving away the affinity I had for things and places that never belonged to me personally, but has valuable memories of my youth, which is relevant to your youth, thus compose the essence, the life in our city. And I will never stop claiming passionately these memories, she said. I claim the loss of use of our common life. So as architects, maybe this is worth noting, that for a city to have a life, they care of the community life before they care of their personal life in that place. And when they lose it, the first thing they want to claim is the public space rather than the personal property. And this is not only Vivian. It's I kept hearing similar claims from many Varoshians that I had interviewed. Now let's go into the first station. I told you that this is the sea has a very significant importance in the way that they remember the life they had in the city. And you see the first poem is called The Camel Rock. When you think of it, it's just a piece of rock. And what is this camel? Well, if you don't know the story, it doesn't make much sense to anyone unless you hear the story of it. And I turned the significance of that rock that you see on the left here, it's a drone photography, the rock very away from the shore. And here on the left, it's my left, you see some people on the rock, right? Are you following me? Can I have a yes? Yes. Okay, cool. You see the people. You see people people in their 60s, even 70s, in their swimming suits on that rock. So what's going on here? Why would you swim to a rock? They must have a reason. The poem will tell you about this. What you see in the middle is a tongue-shaped shore, the tip of the sea shore, where they used to stand up and swim to somewhere that you can't see now. And it's not visible on Google Earth. It's that small. And the name is camel because it looks like a camel shape, you know. The poem starts with saying, from the tip of the tongue at the Glossa beachfront. It is called Glossa. It's a Greek word, and it means language. It means tongue as well. And it takes, the shore takes its name from this physical shape. And this is also worth noting, I believe, how the shape of a place gives meaning to human experience in that place. Let's hear the poem. I will be playing in English, but as I showed you through the web, there are Turkish versions, Greek versions that you can have access later in your own time and place. Let's hear them in English now. The map shows, before we hear the poem, some specific places like Faliro Tavern. You will be hearing that place in the poem. It also talks about Blue Bungalow. These places, like the way I form the poems, the way I decided what to include in the poem, is a kind of inspiration from the place itself. So take my work as a place-inspired art, okay? As well as it's a kind of peace activism art, because I dare to tell the story of the other given to me as an enemy, and by creating this dialogue, but by telling their stories, I believe I open a space for a dialogue to happen, because in return, they start telling my story, not in the form of poetry, not necessarily, but in any form, in any media, in any way that they can. This starts dialogue, and that's what we need, a dialogue. So let's hear the poem, and you can please, when you hear the poem, this is not only about Varosha. I would like you to think of whether you have such stones in your life, whether you have any place, any landmark, any sea mark, any mark in your own life, in your own memory that you somehow value, but it's valuable to you, not everyone, unless you tell its story, and unless you tell it in a way to bring it, to elevate it to a universal human experience, you know? For Varosha, it's this rock. What is it for you? Think of it. Let's hear the poem. It's coming. See Camila here. Camel rock. From the tip of the tongue. I want to make sure that you're hearing it. Yes? Okay.
Yes, we can.
Beach towards the sea horizon, there is a rock in the shape of a camel, not visible on Google Earth. To the rock and back, they used to swim a kilometer, then in their youth, to claim the swimmer crown. These Varoshians, not visible on Google Earth. To the rock and back, they swim the same kilometer, now in their desire to return, to claim the sea kiss life again.
resilience.
I'm really sorry, but it is a very important lesson, okay? I will do the washroom cleaning in the floor and everything as soon as I finish.
We hear people. Can you please mute yourself?
Past and back, I swim through the waves of memory, cannot reach the rock yet. To the past and the future, I swim through the waves of dreams, cannot reach the peace poem at the tip of the tongue yet. The city now is crumbling. The city always wins. You're at the sea mark of hope for sustainable rebuilding, not visible on Google Earth yet.
I am back at the presentation. To save time, you can hear in your own time the sound design of the poems. Let me note that this project was designed as a sound project, yes, sound walking project, and we had a sound designer who designed music to that to this set of poems, not for the sake of romance, but for the sake of creating this environmental atmosphere to the poems. And please hear it in your own time as well. Now, from the poem, I believe you heard the voice of I. I'm at the tip of the tongue, couldn't reach the peace poem yet, something like that, yes? So it's me, in fact, telling the story of the people, the refugees of Varosha, but at the same time, I am connecting that experience to my own experience now. The experience happened in the past, and I am experiencing as an individual standing at that place and connecting it to my aim, to my wish, to my dream, to my work of making peace. So all the poems have a voice. 4 of them has the voice of me, the poet, and 1 of them has the voice of a person from Varosha. I am just being a medium for that person to tell this story. Let's move to the second one. We are still in the sea station, and this one is the one where you hear the voice of that specific person in the first person saying I again, and it talks about a specific memory happened at the sand, in the sand, all over the sand. During the interviews, I kept hearing about how beautiful the sand is, how golden, how soft, how it is just nothing else. Nowhere else in Cyprus you can have that beautiful sand. It's all, stories glorifying the sand. And during my visits to these people, I've seen sand in a bottle, for example, okay, as a decoration in their living room, or I saw a candle made of that sand. The most interesting one for me is the story I was told by a primary school teacher saying, I make my kids, my students, touch the sand. I want them to know the texture of the sand. So this is a geographical definition, geographical texture of a place, and how people have a connection to that geographical specific feature of a place through the sand. Look at the kids touching, trying to understand what their grandmothers mean when they say it's so soft, like silk, like cotton. They're trying to taste this. They're trying to taste the feeling of touching it. Let's hear the poem, and then maybe we can talk about it more.
Golden grains of memory. Take off your shoes and walk to the sea, I said to my son. He was the same age when I left my city, 7. I waited at the shore in the shoes of my mother, watched the sun stepping in through the golden grains. Did not have the towel my mother had, waiting for me to come out of the water and walk back. Never needed that towel. The sand flaked off my feet, though never the dirt, the mud, any other playground. Okay, come to me now, I said to my son. He came out of the water and walked back. He came out of my memory and claimed the fact. He came out of my childhood and became himself. There we were, 7, 47. His clean feet cleaned the wound of my aching soul, inheriting the scald for generations long. Though never the dirt, the mud, any other passing on. No need for a towel.
You heard a story of a father who took his son at the age of 7 to Varosha and asked his son to do the same thing that he used to do. He wanted to test whether his son will feel the same about the sand. That was the story told by his own voice. And I'll move to the last poem in the sea station. This one, again, inspired by the place itself, but about this, specifically this barbed wire, where it directly cuts the tongue. Remember I showed you the shape of the tongue? So it cuts, this barbed wire cuts this tongue, and it goes, if you just look at this Google Earth image, it goes, it's here, and the direct look into the sea will take you to the Camel Rock. It's here. You see how small it is? And I was amazed to see metaphorically how what's happening in that specific place, like tongue shape and cut by a barbed tongue. The place was telling me something. Tongue, cut. So what's going on here? I said, when I think of it, I saw it as how our stories, how our expression is cut by mainstream narratives saying this is, military zone, saying you cannot go home, saying this is Turk, saying this is Greek, this saying this and that. The expression of the bond to that place is cut by the barbed wire. And I wanted to say this story through my poem of how from that cafe here where it says Faliro Tavern, now you have a kind of tent-like cafe that runs now today. When you visit the place, you can see it. The poem is a kind of guide for you to, asking you to be aware of where you are, the kind of story there, the historical fact there, and how and what you can see if you, from that cafe, from that corner, from that cut tongue, move to the city and the things that you will be seeing there. There's a mention of Blue Bungalow. Maybe you heard of this famous Blue Bungalow of the painter, Cypriot painter, George Paul Giorgio. And through its window, you can see a wall painting of Don Quixote. And this has become very, very famous. Everyone is trying to photograph that wall painting. You will be hearing a mention of these in the poem. And it starts with asking you to look at your own feet. So the poem asks you to place yourself there and know where you stand. You stand at the barbed tongue of an island city hidden under the sun. If you go through the text version of the poems, you will see lots of footnotes giving you further explanations, further information of the places. Like hidden under the sun, it is a reference to the name of the city, Amohostos. It means under the sun. So the poem does make references to specific meanings that is shared culturally, and for the foreigners who doesn't know about the place, there is a further explanation in the footnotes. And the poem goes on saying, welcome, whoever you are, it welcomes you. And it says, you too shall pass knowing where you stand. So here's the poem. It's coming.
The barbed tongue. Look at your own feet. Know where you stand. You stand at the barbed tongue of an island city hidden under the sand. The sea ebbs and flows, shows the beach remnants of life seaborne, moves the people of the land like grains of sand, removes the barb of a conquering military mind. Indifferent to the border, the political order of things, indifferent to barbaric attire, this barbed wire, indifferent to pass or whoever is passing, the sea is indifferent. Take a step in. Look at your own feet. Know where you stand. You stand at the barbed tongue of an island city falling behind. Welcome. You too shall pass. Pass knowing where you stand. At the medieval suburbs of the walled glory, the citizens are forced to live by approaching bombs. The homes are fenced off to host the army for decades long. Ghost city, they say, not knowing the citizens dream on. They live elsewhere to return one day, they dream on. You shall know you stand where they come to dream on. Dream with them to revive the city for all of us this time around. Take a step out of the sea and sit for a coffee. Where you sit now used to be a fish tavern, the Phaleron of Varosha and the ancient port of the Athenian Sea. Look at your feet when it's time to walk onwards in the city. Don Quixote is right ahead on the wall in his solitude, awaiting to meet you through the painter's window of the blue bungalow. The blue of the sea will look through you too, balancing the weight of eternal dreams and memories in a backpack.
Every time I visit, I look through the windows of that blue bungalow. Yes, there are remnants of the wall painting, Don Quixote, and you know, all the other walls in ruins and this and that. But this blue through the window literally looks through me as well. And I can't stop looking at that blue of the sea through the window of a house which used to be a painter's studio. And it's like a mirror asking you to question how you can make sense of that place. Yeah, I think that's my favorite. I'll move on to the city. Now into the city. So we're away from the shore now, walking on the Demokratia Street. And this one, I name it as a meditation in the city garden. And if you look at the map here, you will you can see the name of Greek Gymnasium, Boccaccio Cafe, Greek Lyceum of Art. In fact, the name of the school is Greek Lyceum of Famagusta for Women, but I renamed it as Art because the way I used it in my poem refers only to it in terms of the art lessons it was giving to the youth of Varosha then. And there will be a mention of a cafe called Edelweiss. So you see the orange circle. This is where I situate myself to start the meditation. But the kind of meditation that I ask you as the listener, as the audience of the poetry, is not to stop thinking, but to think in a focused way, to know where you are. And I was, while writing, while drafting the poem, I was sitting under this tree in that garden called fig tree, sacred fig tree. Literally, it says a sacred fig tree. And I was listening to the sound of the leaves, like an orchestra of nature, because I know through my readings and through my listenings of the Varoshan narratives that, as you see in the bottom photo, that in that garden, the municipal bando, the music band, used to give concerts, and they are not there anymore. And I was trying to connect this music band, the music that they made, to the music the trees, the garden makes in the present time. So it's me trying to be aware of my surroundings, the neighborhood I sit in between, like in the middle, and how I can experience this tragic place, because the park is alive. It's running. There's a cafe opening, people are coming, sitting under the trees, but the rest of the city is fenced off military zone. So it's really a difficult case of making sense of, understanding, knowing what to do. And I ended up not only as a poet and a scholar, but as someone, a human being on earth, trying to make sense of the place myself. And I was thinking of the photographs, pre-74 photographs of that garden. So this is what you see. This is the school, and you see this pool. The trees are very small, and here you can see the tree growing up. I saw a photo of this bird, which is an archaic bird iconography from Cyprus archaeology, and you can see it on the vase here. So I was connecting the photo taken during the Orange Festival before the war, connecting it to the archaeological visuals that I have experienced, because it's the same bird, you know. And I was also including in my poem, I wanted to include a bird which was from Hawaii, not from Cyprus, but it's a bird called kauai and is extinct now. It doesn't live anymore. There's no more of this bird. And that bird, the sound of the bird reminds me of how the last generation who experienced that place keeps calling for, visibility, keeps calling for the right to return back to their home. Maybe they're not left with time to live in that place, but they're asking, can we please return and diet list? So I wanted to include this extinct Kauai into the poem. You will hear the poem mentioning that word. You will also hear the mention of Edelweiss Cafe. I was literally thinking, why on earth in Varosha before 74, we had a cafe called Edelweiss. Any idea? Do you know what Edelweiss is? Have you heard of that word before? Anyone knows? No? I didn't know. I wanted
I know, yeah, it's a plant that grows up in the Alps.
what kind of plant?
It's like a small plant, flower. It has flowers and it's
White
the
flower.
texture is quite particular. It's almost like a fur. It's so
Have you
soft.
seen it?
Yeah, when I visited Switzerland.
Wow, I haven't seen it, but I know about it. And I know that it's very rare, very special, and why this Swedish flower was in Varosha. You know why? Because we had Swedish tourists at the time, and that was given to attract the tourist of 70s. But more, when I was trying to understand what Edelweiss is, I have learned that the Greek name was Leontopodium. And Leontopodium, the botanic name of that flower, I mean, means lion hand. And I was thinking, okay, we have a very, very famous lion of Famagusta. How can I include that? How can I connect the lion of Famagusta to that Edelweiss Cafe? Because through Varosha, I am telling the story of Famagusta. I am telling the story of Cyprus. So, okay, you will hear a mention of Leontopodium, the lion of Famagusta. It comes from that name of the cafe. You also hear Boccaccio Cafe, and these are the neighborhoods of that garden, okay? Like you sit in that garden and you look around and you will see those cafes, the schools. And Boccaccio is an Italian writer, Renaissance writer. And they also had in Varosha another restaurant called the Camaron. And this is, again, related to this Italian Boccaccio. It's the very famous set of collection of stories. So you can see how the city is designed, seeing all these foreign connections, cultural activities. There is a mention of Greek Lyceum of Art as well. I mean, the people of Varosha during the interviews kept telling me how, as you walk on Demokratia Street, which is open now for public visits, they could hear the sound of piano, the sound of guitar, the sound of, coro singing. It was an art school in the afternoons. So the poem is a kind of collection of all in a new context. And it's me experiencing that place. Here's the poem. And you see me in the video walking together with an architect colleague. He was just with me during my field visits, trying to make sense of that place. And I needed an architect to tell me the kind of architectural vision of creating such a city, and he has been very helpful. Let me take that opportunity. Thank you, people. You architects always inspire me, and I mean it because you are the ones telling everyone how a place is created. It's coming.
Meditation in the city garden. A sole sound of a bird, breaks through my withering mind, as soul as the last call of the last bird Kauai, and placing the mist of my thoughts in the garden of Varosha. I sit there to meditate under the fig tree, stretching my feet to the street of democracy, stretching as if to a dry bed of once roaring river, opening a mouth to tell a story, then flowing into the sea. What a river is to a forest is what a street is to a city. What is this hostage place in ruins to me, to you, to its people displaced abruptly from the floor? What can this new asphalt open in a closed city? It is the power of nature that opens the cracks where the asphalted memories come to light. It is Varoshians that keep the attachment strong, where the home place in the heart never collapses. A soul motif of a bird was decorated here with oranges for the festive days, flying from the archaic times to this garden and perched, lost at the unexpected loss of these festivities. As delicate as the Edelweiss, the hope to regain remains in the ruins of the cafe that the white flower names. It was the setting for the first experiences of the youth, their first smoke, their first flirt, even their very first kiss. I meditate on the idea of connecting the line of Famagusta to the botanic name of this flower learned to podium. A sudden zephyr in the garden disconnects the flux from the covered name of the Greek gymnasium. It keeps blowing in the ruins of the Cafe Boccaccio, turning the pages of 100 stories in the Decameron, a book of reflections on the values of the Renaissance, reflected in the agenda of the cafe's small parliament, a soul sound of the piano. From the Greek Lyceum of Art, preluded the band, marching in the street parade of democracy then. The trees in the garden compose the music live today. The athletes in this stadium used to train to pass the torch of the then everlasting flame. Between ancient and modern, between past and present, is the future of this city an extinguished flame, a soul sound of a bird, as soul as the last call of the last Varoshians, a call for justice in the name of humanity, in the name of revival and life's continuity.
You remember the last line? A call for? Hmm? Anyone?
Did it say call for unity?
Okay, I leave the answer of the question for you to go back to the video, watch it, and read it through the text if you prefer. But as I said, I mean, the way the people of Varosha, Varoshian refugees tell their stories as the last generation with the real memory, like first-hand memory, it is a generation to be extinct in their 70s. They're in their 70s, 80s, and the attachment of the new generation to this place is different. Let me go to the last one. Last poem, then maybe I can start receiving your questions. I'm sure you have many. Now, the last one is called Cypriot Kind of Glimpse, and we're now in the Agora station. But Agora station is where you cannot go. I mean, you can be in the station, but you can't go into Agora. As you see in the map, it's in the forbidden zone still, the Agora station. But if you just stop at the corner of Singer, and I think everyone knows what Singer is. It's a sewing machine brand that all Cypriots know, because all the mothers used to, you know, have that machine at home. It's a culturally significant brand to us. And from that corner, I stopped and looked into the city. You know, this Evagora Avenue, you'll hear a mention of that street, of that avenue. The municipal market Agora is here. And there will be a mention of Haji Hambi Cinema. There will be a mention of the municipal library and the gallery. There's a mention of Afendiyu, Aksendiyu. It's a Greek letter. I have difficulties in saying Aksendiyu street. You will be hearing all these streets. So we will be, I mean, the poem will be talking about the neighborhood of that specific corner Singer, okay? But it is about the market, the Agora, then, and all the surroundings. But I named the poem as Cypriot Kind of Glimpse because to be able to have a look at the facade of that Agora, you have to stretch yourself to be able to see. You have to have a kind of diagonal look from that corner towards there, because you can't go there. And every time I attempted to go, I heard the police saying, "You can't go there. You can't go there. This you can't go there." Shout at me by the police is the shout of the politicians to us wanting the future of ideal Cyprus to come. You can't go there. You can't go there. You keep hearing from the authority telling you, you can't go there, you can't go there. And this is how I structured the poem, on how Cypriots will always have to, until we make peace, will always have to stretch their bodies over barbed tongue or rusty barrels or dead ends, dark holes. This is what the poem repeats, saying that we have the Cypriot kind of glimpse. But it's not only Cypriot kind. It's a kind of people who are trying to see beyond the borders, trying to see beyond constantly failing attempts to make peace. It's a look, it's an attempt to have a look at possible futures to come. But we always have to bend ourselves or stretch ourselves to have a vision, a vision of something that we want to see. Here's the poem, but before the poem, let me add that you see that movie visual here called The Sound of Music. And you don't know this, I mean, unless you are in your 60s, you don't know about it. I didn't know about it. And I was told that as the people of Varosha walking on the street of this Demokratia street, by the, as they were passing by the cinema, they were checking all the, you know, brochures, movie visuals, just like we do in our lives now. We go to a cinema and we got all the visuals of movies. And they were mentioning this movie to me, saying it was very famous then, and we still remember the lyric, I mean, the sound tracks of that movie, like we do today. If you love the soundtrack, we download it on Spotify and we keep listening to the music. But the sound of music, of course, was not known to me. And I made a little research and I heard the soundtrack. And I wanted to include the soundtrack in the design of the poem and in the lines of the poem, because the tastes, the smells, the sounds are inseparable elements of what a place to a person. When you remember a place, you remember a certain smell, you remember a certain sound or taste. But this agora, I've never been there, and I kept trying to go there. You can't go there, you can't go there is all I got. But you know, when you are not able to go somewhere, you have to find ways of going there in your mind. And this is what I was trying to do at the Singer Corner. Do you all have in your mind a marketplace? It doesn't have to be that specific one, but everyone, when you were a kid, when you go for a shopping, if you're into shopping from markets, especially public markets, you know how it smells. Yes, can you imagine in your mind the smell of a market, open market? You smell all the, you know, fresh vegetables, of maybe sugar. You have it in your life somewhere, and you can connect to that specific place, which is in the forbidden zone. And when people tell you it was, you know, our Sunday activity with our grandparents, with our parents, to go there, buy all these, you know, fresh fruits, vegetables, meat that you know, that will make the Sunday dinner. This is not maybe familiar to you from that specific place as your age. I mean, thinking of your age, not to me even, as I am your elderly, let's say. But I do have a market in my life. I am from Nicosia, and I remember the smell of that place when my mother used to take me to that Pandabulia of Nicosia, if that is familiar to you. But no matter from where you are from, you have that place in your mind. And the whole point of the poem is to try, is to open that empathic place. Feel empathy for people saying that I want to go there, I want this to be back in life, I want to smell the same smell again, at least similar smells, because this is taken from me. And what we get in return, you can't go there. Here's the point.
A secret kind of glimpse. You can't go there, the police warned me. I'm just looking, I said, and firmed my feet on the ground. Kept stretching my head towards Avagora Avenue to get a glimpse of the municipal market's facade, the Agora of Varosha, a place of the commons. A diagonal look from the Singer's shop corner, and my mind trespassed the forbidden zone. A Cypriot kind of stretching over all kinds of borders, rusty barrels, barbed wires, dark holes, and dead ends. To get a kind of glimpse of possible bridges to unite the long-desired return with the future resettlement. The agricultural mosaic of the city that market was then, the main supplier for the local public and the foreign. Now, you can't go there, the police repeated. My head returned to its unstretched posture, checking if I can lean on the wall at the same corner. to stay a little longer at this junction of memory and wonder. Fresh groceries from the villages still smelling of wet soil, a mixture of spicy herbals, sweet fruits, crunchy roots. The Suflagi smoke pulling the shoppers in to satisfy their hunger. The fountain at the Athendiu street was there to cool the summer heat and the sweat of intensive labor. An oasis in the city I wish I could take as shelter. You can't go there. Imagining the agora revealed the aromas of my memory. I listed them one by one like my favorite things. Imagine at the times of disappointment and grief, like in the musical from the 60s, The Sound of Music. It used to play at Hacı Hamdi, the cinema in ruins. Only darkness is on show now. Light is long awaited. The source of enlightenment was the public library, shining on the artworks too in the upper floor gallery. The cultural and intellectual mosaics of affluent life formed then to bring the city ahead of its time. The war came and shattered this trajectory. Progress shines today on the shards of the broken. Hope collectors safeguard the remnants of mutual care, mutual understanding of loss, injustice, and open wounds. In culture, we trust in a shared sense of Cyprus, over the rusty barrels, barbed wires, dark holes, dead ends. A Cypriot kind of glimpse of the shared sense of the future. Can we go there?
Thank you. I'll stop sharing and I will see if your comments and questions. Yes.
Thank you very much, Jakove.
I wanted to say also thank you, Nafia. I really enjoyed the narrative of the whole, if I can say, maybe scenography, I'm not sure it's the right word. And I would let the audience to, I don't know if we have hands up in Zoom or something.
You can also write your questions through the chat if you are somehow having audio problems.
Yeah.
You will need to, I assume, to hear the poems again. Maybe you will need to read the poems with further info, explanations. I know it's not easy to digest so quickly to come up with questions, but you can always reach me later as well. But if you have some, I'm here.
Maybe I'll share something. I heard, first of all, thank you. I heard Nafia present a shorter version of this in a symposium in the buffer zone a couple of months ago. I think she only read one of the poems that was in this presentation. And there were foreign people there as well, just like, our platform now. And I asked her, what was the reaction you got from the Greek Cypriots that you were interviewing? I mean, you're a Turkish Cypriot, you're not from Varosha. So in my head, I was imagining the reaction to be, who are you to tell our story? You're not one of us, let's say. So I was wondering if you had any negative reactions. And she said, which was a really beautiful answer and it stuck with me. She said she wanted to learn about the other so that the other asks her story. So she said, when you ask somebody, how are you? You're expecting them to ask, how are you back? So, by studying the other, she was hoping that the other studies her. And I thought that was, a really nice way of thinking about it. And it's, starting a dialogue in this sense. So that stuck with me. And I think that's just something that will stay with me. And I really like that you did that. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Asia. You remember it so well. I mean, these were my exact words. Have you tested? Like, go and ask someone how they are, and this will definitely bring, I mean, at least create the intention of a possible dialogue to come, because when you care how someone is, it creates automatically, naturally, an expectation of care back. But you don't do this with that expectation necessarily. I mean, when you show care, this comes back to you with care. And I've been testing this, and it works. When it doesn't work, you just go and test it on someone else. I mean, I never allow any negative reaction to me, or as a person, or to me as a researcher, or to me as a Turkish Cypriot, or whatever. I don't feel stuck with, I never allow myself to feel stuck with negative reactions, because there are many other people waiting to be asked how they are. I mean, that was my first, I was shocked, I was shocked when I heard the first question. It wasn't even the official start of my research. I was just doing my preliminary observations, and I attended a kind of gathering of people of Varosha. And I was trying to approach to them to, allow them to be familiar with me, because I was planning to approach them officially. And when I said, I am here about to start the research on your experience of being enforced from your home, and I want to understand what it means to have a forbidden home. The first, I never, like, you always will have my reaction in your mind, Asya. I will have her reaction to me saying, "Where have you been?" I was like, like, I don't know you. What do you mean, where have I been? Was it, I mean, were you really expecting me to come and ask you this question? Not necessarily me, but anyone. Can anyone please care to know how we have been trying to survive with an idea of home somewhere, that we kept hearing that we will be returning the next day, the next week, the next year, the next decade, and it's been 5 decades. And I felt, okay, I am responsible. I am responsible for opening a kind of dialogue that we can talk about this. And I have never had one interview finishing without them interviewing me back. Because I wanted someone to ask me, how have I been surviving in a unrecognized, invisible, non-existent side of Cyprus? I want this to be a subject, So through these show of care, you would definitely, one way or another, be shown care. And I'm happy to have started this with the people of Varosha. You may wonder why I'm working on Varosha. Like, I'm not from Agustin. I don't have any property inside. Have you been wondering why? Shall I tell you why?
I mean, it's a possible question that I guess some of us were thinking to ask you.
Yeah. I can imagine. Maybe this will bring us to this concept of in-betweenness as well. I was born into conflict in 75. Okay, I haven't experienced the war itself, but being born into the conflict immediately after the war, and trying to make sense of the border, the barbed wires, hearing the south of my island, which is forbidden to me until 2003 with the checkpoint openings. You know, having an identity that is not allowing me to travel on Earth, and I had to go and ask for a citizenship of another country than Turkey. With 2003 checkpoint openings, I went to apply for the citizens of Republic of Cyprus, but I also have Republic of Northern Cyprus ID card. So in total, I have 3, which none of them would fully identify me. You know, when I show my Republic of Cyprus passport while traveling, people think I speak Greek. And you have to, you know, throw at them the whole history of Cyprus, telling, you know what, Turkish is also the official language of the island, and I am the native speaker of Turkish, I am Turkish-speaking Cypriot. And then they might just even ask, like, but how come you can't speak Greek? And then another, you know, round of storytelling, blah, blah, blah. It's never easy to explain where you're from, why you don't speak Greek. And when I used to use the citizenship of Turkey, you don't feel culturally identified by this citizenship because you're not Turkish, you're an islander, a Cypriot, which has a totally different cultural fabric, you know. With what TRNC is just irrelevant anyway, not valid in the international law, with all these fragmented identities. I crossed to the south, and I have to speak in English. I don't speak the language of my Greek Cypriot friends, Greek. I stay in north, and I feel I don't even belong here because I never see myself from my own spot. You know, when you have a look at yourself from abroad, you don't exist. And I started feeling homely at the buffer zones. I started feeling this homely feeling in an abandoned places. When I remember the times walking by the barbed wire before the opening to public visits of Varosha, and trying to make sense of all these abandoned homes. And this is a place with no human, and I am a person with no place that I feel belong, that I feel home. And I said, okay, there is a story here that I have to catch. A place with no human, a person with no place. So if I chase the story of that place, maybe eventually this will bring me, or this will, you know, hold my hand to take me to a place that I want to get to, which is one Cyprus. So I was just, you know, vacuumed by the emptiness of that place. And the more I talk to people, the better I understand what it means to crave home, any place that will feel homely. And the conversations, I mean, my caring questions opened an empathic space between us to talk about how I need to get to, not return, to get to a place which is not there yet. So I do feel displaced from, forcibly displaced from an ideal place, in the exact way that they feel displaced, forcibly displaced from their ideal place. In our context, Varosha. I think that explains how I relate to that experience of being displaced from anywhere homely. Am I confusing you?
No, personally, no, it's not confusing. I hope not non-islanders, but I guess more places in Europe, in continental Europe, they have this kind of not buffer zone, but maybe gray zones, I would say, that can maybe get related to somehow. For me, was the quote that you mentioned at the beginning. I claim the laws of our common land, if I wrote it well, and because it's very important, and because how important actually is the public space.
Yeah.
And indeed, even as a Greek Cypriot, like my parents or my grandparents, because they're from Famagusta, yeah, the house actually of my father is from the Ghost City part. Yeah, so he never could, yeah, he could never visit it yet again. So they always speak about, you know, like maybe the foreigners don't know, like yeah, I don't know, maybe sell the property, or like of my mother, that is, you can go actually, because the ones in the buffers in the Ghost City you can't. Or I don't know, and they always speak the memories of the private spaces or the importance, but they somehow, we tend to forget to how we can claim the public spaces. And we can also see that in, let's say, non-military areas, even in the south, let's say, the public spaces, how can we actually claim public spaces in a normal run society, which is somehow left behind, and that it's very important place of in-betweeners, even in normal public spaces, is a sort of in-betweeners. And yeah, it was stuck in my mind. I don't necessarily have a question, but yeah, it was very beautiful, well connected. In the chat, we don't really have a question. I don't know why.
Marina's trying to say something. She unmuted herself, but
Yeah, go ahead.
All through the lecture, I was constantly thinking that this would have been a very provocative architecture student thesis project, but I feel like we tend to forget this gray zone, this gray area, and we tend to make everything very specific and very measured. But I feel like the way you approached it through poems and through leaving people to interpret it their own way sometimes as well, feels more, embodies more, way more things than proposing specific stuff or visualizing everything. I feel like this has let me imagine a city I've never visited better than anything else.
I think you just summarized the power of poetry in telling these stories, to make people visualize the places and to know about the places. I mean, I have a PhD thesis somewhere getting dusted, you know, but it was my responsibility as a poet to somehow transfer that data into poetry so that I can reach you. I mean, maybe as an architecture student, you wouldn't ever read a communication thesis, but now it's out there as in the form of poetry, which is communicating better than academic language, I would say. Art in general has this power for social change, for inspirational, you know, further works. You can now turn this, I mean, me, myself, now at the process of telling my experimental experience, let's say, transferring academia into artistic thing, in an academic language. Like, I want to publish a paper that will tell how I did it, because it was just an experiment, and I want others to experience it as well, not necessarily as poems, but how can we artists and you architects can get together, let's say, and work together, like create a kind of narrative, be it in the form of a building, be it in the form of a poem, to tell a story of a place. I mean, can you think of a kind of workshop of architects together with artists and all the other different relevant disciplines coming together and working? I always find this discipline separation fake. We end up coming together, informing each other on our work, because how can you think of a place without its narrative, without its stories? It's impossible. I mean, unless a place has a story, it's a meaningless space up in the air until it is made meaningful with the experience of people living in it somehow. Yeah.
I think I'm not sure how to pronounce your name. Noman wants to say something.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Hello, everybody. Firstly, where have you been? And
Yeah, I always get this question.
secondly,
Like, people think I'm lost, but I'm here working,
secondly, my apologies. I cannot open my camera, but you can imagine me as a tall guy who speak multiple different foreign languages, and I am literally shaking and shivering of hearing very familiar voices and names, Cyprus and Famagusta. I do have I'm not an islander, I'm not a Cypriot, I am Punjabi, but I do have a very, let's say, personal connection with Cyprus and with the islanders. So, what we did in this session is literally we did our catharsis and we cried and we yelled, celebrated, and time to time enjoyed, at least I did, the misery and the invisibility and the impact of some probably drunk soldier man in uniform or in a high public office protecting his cheap ego and ordering such a misery and torturing or killing the human who did nothing but worshipping an ocean, probably from the Camel Rock, if I remember it correctly. As our Newman speaker, she mentioned she's converting her academic magic into artistic, so she can expand the audience. Personally, the resolutions I follow, as in Punjabi, I never understand the need of any expandation in audience, but yeah, from her lips to God's ear. Coming to my question, or let's say a thought. Um, uh, there was two words which was the reason of me being there, was a home and in betweenness. And I was there, I believe, not long ago in Cyprus, and then personally, individually, me as in having a blood of Punjabi, and then getting born in some other landscapes, and then kept moving throughout, like places to places, cities to cities, heart to heart, moment to moment. That was my life for as long as I remember. So I am not really sure how to conclude my thought here, because I'm not a very formal or academic or poet person. So I'm always with the lack of words. And yeah, this is what we Punjabis are. Mostly we just, like things just make sense to us. We are not the one who go on the stages and talk and then bring logics or calculations and then conclusions. We just look eye to eye and boom, we have our understanding. This is how we live. This is what the blood I have in me. But yeah, this thing of in-betweenness, yes, narrowly our topic is Varosha and the ghost town and then Cyprus precisely. But the only, let's say, a thought I'm sharing here is whatever we are talking, it's not happening in this very moment. I mean, the impact is there in this very moment, but the incident itself, it happened back in 1974 or 75 or whenever, and we are still the one who are dealing with the impacts of it. But then comes to this very practical life, like most probably, I don't know about any one of you, but me, I'm going to finish this session and then I'm going to go back to my corporate job so I can pay my bill. So coming like now, I'm trying to make a point out of here is in my practical life, did I learn anything from my history? Like me, I'm sitting here and giving the references and then having the best poems and the architecture support and then the academic reference towards it. But me as an individual, did I learn anything from my history, or am I still the one who's somehow following the footsteps of whoever back then in that uniform who ordered such a misery to such a beautiful humans? Like, am I still leaving anything's in between? It can be a dinner, an assignment, a meal, a hug, a kiss, or you just name it. And this is a time where I am getting out of words. So yeah, thank you, everyone. And thank you.
Thank you, Noman, for your comments. I just want to add one thing to this. Remember the fourth poem, the meditation poem, where I sit under the sacred fig tree and try to meditate about the place to make sense of it. This attempt to make sense of a tragic space, it feels like expanding the present moment enough to cover the past and the future. So it was me exercising how to be between the past and the future. This is the only way I can experience the present time. And maybe through this exercise, expanding present moment back to the past and forward to the future, we can start learning before we take a new step towards the future. I don't know, I feel it's our individual responsibility to be able to experience the present moment as a huge continuum that will cover the past and the future, because present means for me to practice life between past and the future. It's never independent from the past, it's never independent from the future. So any building you create is created under the vision of the future. You already see people somehow living in it or doing things in it. So this is, anything we do now is always future oriented, but the way we see the futures comes from the past teachings, be it a teaching that will tell you not to do something or to do something. This is how I can comment on your reaction, Noman. I'm happy that somehow the poems and the lecture itself had an impact on you, remembering your time in Cyprus and your experience with the city there. But the only thing I can do is to exercise being in between past and the future, nothing else. Yeah.
Amen.
Any other comment or questions? Shall I leave you go? Asya, feel free to leave my contact info, emails, phones, anything. I know, especially when it's poetry, you need to have some private time with them. I'm always open to further conversations. If you are coming to Cyprus, I know you're planning field trips. I'll be happy to join you if you need me near you. So let's keep in touch.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. As I said, I admire architects. They're my inspirational, birds flying over my sky. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Shall we go? Asya, may